few other things that you want to be aware of is that you shouldn't be afraid to pause and collect your thoughts. If you need a few seconds to gather your thoughts on how you want to answer something, that's perfectly okay. If you need to ask an employer to rephrase a question, perhaps they didn't ask it in a way that was very comprehensible, feel free to ask them. And if you need more information, don't be afraid to ask questions in order to help you provide a better answer. Okay, one other thing that you should be aware of is something called behavioral interviewing. And behavioral interviewing is where they ask you, this is a situation, how would you handle it? So basically, you're giving an answer on how you would behave, thus the name behavioral interviewing. Be prepared, again, to give some of those examples that I talked about earlier as far as past behavior, because those are good indicators as far as letting them know that you know how to handle a situation and that in fact you have handled something like this in the past. Okay, the last part of the interview is the closure, and this is a chance for the interviewer to let you know that they've summarized what has occurred and what has transpired during the interview, and they would usually give you some additional information such as when they might be making a decision. If they don't offer this information, that might be a question that you should ask. And they would usually ask you, do you have any additional questions? Now, throughout the interview, hopefully you had some questions to ask them. An interview should be interactive where you're also speaking to them and learning more things about the company. At this point, you can also ask some questions, and some good questions might be, tell me what a typical day might be like. Probably one of the questions that I've heard from interviewers that they like the best is, what would you consider to be the greatest challenge of this position? And they love that, so that should be on your roster for questions to ask. Finally, as the interview concludes, you should thank them for their time, express your interest in the position, again, be very enthusiastic about it, and then ask them for a business card, because if you don't already have their contact information, this is when you would want to have that in order to follow up with a thank you note. Thank you notes should always be sent. 50% of the interviewers do not, or interviewees, do not send thank you notes. This is a chance for you to possibly tip the scales in your favor and actually land the job. I would send an email right away that day and then follow it up with a handwritten, yes, a handwritten short note, thanking them for their time and re-expressing your interest in the position. Okay, now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is how to dress for the interview. The first cardinal rule for dressing is, when in doubt, it is better to dress up than to not be dressed up enough. So, if I were you, I would always want to impress an employer. Nothing says more to an employer about the fact that you really want this position than if you took the time to make yourself look extremely professional. I would wear a suit if I were you. If you don't have a suit, at least wear a jacket, and that goes for men or women. Your clothes should be clean and pressed, as should your shoes be cleaned. I would leave your look to a very conservative look with a simple hairstyle, minimal makeup for the women. Ear piercings should be confined to an earlobe for women, and men should take any piercings that they have out. If you have tattoos, you should cover them up. If you're thinking about getting a tattoo in the future, think about where you want to get that as far as how that might affect your employability in the future. And don't do it when you're getting drunk. Okay. And then a couple of other things I'd like to tell you is that you should always be punctual. I would arrive about 10 minutes prior to an interview, not more, not less. If you're early, if you're a person that gets there very early, you can sit in the parking lot and wait for a little while. But walk into the actual office about 10 minutes prior to the actual interview. Okay, a few tips as far as communicating. You want to speak clearly. You want to pronounce your words correctly. If you're a person that drops off your R's or your G's, make sure that you're trying to pronounce them during the interview. Try to not use words that will be distracting, filler words such as or some kind of expression that you might say like or you know. Okay, again, be positive and enthusiastic throughout the interview and always be honest as far as the information that you provide. Okay, a couple of last tips. Always display pride and enthusiasm in all of the jobs that you have done in the past, any work that you have done. You want to convey to an employer that you are proud of yourself and your accomplishments up to that point. Discuss your direction in your career path. Even if you're not sure what you'll be doing 5 years from now, you want to let them know that you have an idea about where you want to be. You want to have something prepared for that answer because very likely they will ask you that question. And finally, you want to display a genuine interest in an employer's operations and a desire to help them achieve their objectives. If you can convey that information to an employer, as opposed to saying that I want this job because I want to get a job in my field, or you're looking to get experience in your field, that answer will not work. Let them know that you're interested in helping them achieve their objectives and that you're truly interested in whatever services or product they may offer, and that will go a lot further than another type of an answer. Okay, now let's talk about decisions. If you have interviewed with more than one employer, you may have decided what your first choice is, second choice, and third choice. And you may hear from choice number 3 first. Ask them for a day or two to think about it, and then go back to your employer number 1 and say, I'd like to work for you. Again, show that enthusiasm. Let them know that they are your first choice, but that you have been offered another position. And have they made a decision, or are they close to making a decision? This way you put the ball in their court and they know if they have to move quickly if they really want you. And if they don't, they will let you know that so that you can accept that job offer that you've already gotten. If there's anything that hasn't been clarified, such as salary, benefits, vacation time, if you already have a vacation that is planned, which often happens when someone takes a job, they may have paid for a hotel room, airfare. Employers are usually okay with this if this is something that has already occurred, so don't be afraid to bring that up. If you are doing a co-op or an internship and you need to take time off for spring break, that should be something that should be discussed with the employer prior to you accepting that position, so that everything is on the table and you're not worried about that as that time approaches. Finally, how to handle if you don't get the job. See if you can obtain some constructive feedback as far as how you did during the job interview. That may be, as I told you way back in the beginning, in my situation, that may be what will help you to get the job the next time that you go on a job interview. Okay, thank you very much for your time today. I hope that I've answered all your questions. If I haven't, please feel free to stop by the Career Center and we would all be glad to answer your questions.